Welcome, a warm welcome here in Vienna. My dear friend and colleague Arad, it's the second time I can welcome you this year already. Our two countries are tied by very strong and historic ties in the friendship, going from a long-lasting development cooperation, economic ties in the cultural area. Just recently a large business delegation was in Yerevan to explore how we could intensify our trade. But today's meeting is very focused on one issue which is of high importance to Austria. I'm very thankful to Armenia for the cooperation in this regard. Is obviously the signature of our protocol of implementation on the EU readmission agreement. With this we have a clear roadmap, we have clear guidelines, we have clear standards how to proceed in returns of illegal migrants. Not that we have an issue bilaterally between Austria and Armenia for the time being, but that's the fourth agreement we have signed this year. We think about Iraq, about Morocco, and about India. And it is an endeavor which is for us extremely important because Austria has been heavily affected last year. We have the highest number of asylum seekers in continental Europe per capita. And any asylum system without a clear and working readmission system for those who do not get asylum does not work. So I'm very thankful for this cooperation and that we could clearly establish common standards and guidelines for readmission. We obviously also discussed the regional situation, which is of high importance to us. Geostrategically, yes, the focus might be for many parts in the European Union on the east, on the waging a war of aggression in Ukraine, but we should not neglect other neighborhoods of the European Union. Southern Caucasus is one of them. I'm extremely thankful for the very strong commitment and engagement of the European Union. You had just on Saturday talks with the President Charles Michel. You had talks in Washington. I think I have the impression things are slowly moving into the right direction, into, I hope, one day sustainable peace agreement. But there are many open questions still to be discussed. If you think about the release of detainees, the unblocking of transport links, the delimitation of the borders, and there's one humanitarian issue which is of high concern for us. This is the blocking of the Lachin corridor. And this is unsustainable, it has to stop, and it has to stop immediately. This is a very, very clear position, not only by Austria, but by the European Union as such. And we obviously also discussed efforts to normalize relations with Turkey. We had expert talks here in Vienna in the past, and I obviously again offered Vienna as a meeting point for talks between Armenia and Turkey if needed. And then we raised the OSCE, which I believe I can talk on behalf of both of us, is an important platform and regional organization which brings all actors together, which is a difficult organization in the sense it has never been a like-minded organization, but it will be needed also in the future. It's our lifeline towards the Southern Caucasus, if I now take the European perspective, towards Central Asia. And I believe we both have the same approach to preserve this platform and to keep it for the day after, if I may say so. Thank you again, warm welcome in Vienna, and the floor is yours.
Well, dear Minister, first of all, dear attendees, first of all, I would like to thank my colleague, Mr. Schallenberg, for the invitation to Vienna and the warm welcome. The contacts between the two countries and between me and my counterpart, my dear friend, including on the level of foreign ministers, are quite intensive, and today as well we had fruitful discussions on many issues of mutual interest. We commended the high level of political dialogue between Armenia and Austria, touched upon the dynamically developing bilateral cooperation in recent years in areas of economy, trade, business ties, science, education, culture, people-to-people contacts, and other spheres. In this context, we mentioned the role and activities of the Armenian-Austrian Joint Commission on Trade, Economic and Scientific Technical Cooperation, as well as the prospects of effective use of existing and tapped potential in all mentioned areas. Mr. Minister, I'm glad to mention the significant increase in bilateral trade turnover between our countries during the first half of this year. In this context, I recall the Armenian-Austrian Business Forum that took place in Yerevan during your visit last year. I give special importance also to the commitment of Austria to support the sustainable development efforts in Armenia. During your visit in 2022, the opening of the Austrian Development Agency Coordination Office in Yerevan indeed was a stimulus for the development of our relations. Today we also exchanged views on our cooperation in various international platforms, including the framework in the framework of the United Nations and the OSCE. A wide range of issues related to the Armenia-EU partnership was on the agenda of our meeting. We touched upon the importance of the EU's consistent assistance to democratic reforms and the development of institutional capacities in Armenia. We attached particular importance to the activities of the EU civilian monitoring mission operating in Armenia since February. It makes an important contribution to reducing tensions and preventing escalations at international borders between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I expressed my gratitude to my colleague and the government of Austria for the participation of the Austrian observers in this mission. I would like to note that we also discussed the possibilities of Armenia-EU cooperation in the field of security, taking into account the inaugural meeting of the Armenian-EU Political and Security Dialogue held in January this year. Dear attendees, our discussion today also focused on developments on regional security and stability. I briefed my colleague on the security situation in the South Caucasus, Armenia's vision of establishing peace, the process of normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and the efforts made by Armenia and the international community to achieve results. We are confident, and I believe that Armenia is not alone on this, that stable peace in the region is possible if the issues of the rights and security of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh are properly addressed within the framework of an international mechanism through Stepanakert-Baku dialogue. In this context, it is regrettable to state that instead of engaging in such a dialogue, Azerbaijan is currently pursuing a policy of ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh. A clear manifestation of it is the blockade of Nagorno-Karabakh, which has been going on for more than 7 months now. Nagorno-Karabakh is now on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe. This is happening in violation of international humanitarian norms and contrary to the numerous appeals of international actors, resolutions, and the legally binding order of the International Court of Justice of February 22, by the way, the court, which, by the way, the court reaffirmed with its order on July 6 this year. In the negotiation process with Azerbaijan, the key issue is to ensure maximum certainty regarding the interstate border. In this context, it should be emphasized that the borders of the former Soviet republics, as recognized by the Almaty Declaration, serve as the interstate border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Armenia is also interested in unblocking the regional economic and transport infrastructure, which should be based on the sovereignty and jurisdiction of the countries, and according to the principles of equality and reciprocity. Of course, for reaching agreements to the mentioned issues, the general atmosphere is very important. The rejection of the use of force or threat of use of force, as well as hostile and aggressive rhetoric, the solution of urgent humanitarian issues, in particular release of all Armenian prisoners of war by Azerbaijan, are important for creating an environment conducive for peace. In conclusion, I would like to note that in the above mentioned issues and as a priority in lifting the blockade of Lachin corridor, Armenia expects effective steps by international actors, especially by the members of the UN Security Council. Mr. Minister, dear friend, thank you once again for the warm, welcome and fruitful, comprehensive conversation. I'm greatly interested in continuing this dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ministers. Do we have any questions at this point?
Mr. Mizrayan, you mentioned the upswing in bilateral trade relations. I looked at the Financial Times today reporting that a lot of these trade relations take place in the field of used cars, which get immediately re-exported to Russia. Do you regard this as potential sanctions busting, and are you concerned about possible sanctions by the EU against your country?
Well, of course, this war affected the Armenian economy as well, both positively and negatively. But since you are speaking about sanctions, I would like to once again and publicly and loudly reassure everybody who is interested in this topic that Armenia is not going to become a space where the sanctions could be bypassed. We're working very closely and in a very transparent manner with the respective bodies from the European Union, but also from the United States and elsewhere, to make sure that the will of government of Republic of Armenia is to avoid creating an environment where the sanctions could be bypassed, are open, are transparent, and if there are problems, and I guess there can be problems as elsewhere, the problems are identified in time and proper solutions are given to them.
May I add, as you know, in the 11th sanctions package, we have, as European Union, agreed on a mechanism on this issue, and I believe your approach is exactly the right one. Create an atmosphere of transparency, of cooperation, because yes, everybody is observed, and we don't want to have the feeling that any third country becomes a platform for target circumvention of our EU sanctions. And I'm very thankful for my Armenian friend to have very clearly said that you are cooperating in a transparent manner with the EU and American authorities, because I believe that is of utmost importance. Thank you.
I will read the question from the Armenian media addressed to Minister Schallenberg. As it is well known and was once again mentioned by Armenia's foreign minister and Minister Schallenberg, you also stated the clear position of Austria regarding the blockade of the Lachin corridor. It's been continuing already for 7 months, and you know that the Nagorno-Karabakh is already facing a humanitarian catastrophe. So how can Austria be instrumental? What kind of tools can be used to find concrete solutions and leave the blockade of the Nagorno-Karabakh, of the Lachin corridor, and implement the decisions of the International Court of Justice? Thank you.
I mean, as I said at the very beginning, our position on this issue is very clear. We are extremely concerned about a growing humanitarian situation in Nagorno-Karabakh because of the closing of the corridor. And yes, there's a clear demand to at least open the possibility for NGOs like the International Committee of the Red Cross and others to access, to provide humanitarian aid. That's the least of the things that has to be done. And I believe, and you stated very clearly, you are now engaged in peace negotiations. And peace negotiations need also an atmosphere of trust, of mutual trust, of confidence. And I believe that we all have to be aware this situation on the Lachin corridor could be the one stumbling block which could become potentially the one factor blowing the whole thing up. And so I believe the call is on the authorities and the concerned parties to open the corridor and to take clear steps to at least ease the humanitarian situation on the ground.
Thank you.
One more question?
Mr. Schallenberg offered Vienna as a place of talks between Europe and Armenia. What is your answer to that? Are you considering this?
Well, once again, my appreciation to my dear colleague for offering Vienna to become a space for Armenian-Turkish normalization process. I believe a couple of times our representatives already met here in Vienna and had an opportunity to discuss the normalization, and they hopefully will continue doing so. We had a pause, I would like to add this, in this process, I believe due to the electoral campaign and elections in Turkey. Now it's time to continue the talks on normalization, and there are very concrete steps that already can be implemented by both sides to make sure that we're on the right track, and the things are moving towards a final and comprehensive and holistic normalization of relations, opening the border between two countries and establishing diplomatic relations. And here, of course, I primarily speak about opening the border with the third country nationals, the border between Armenia and Turkey, but also Armenian and Turkish nationals with diplomatic passports, and there are a couple of other projects which are being discussed as well.
But there are no further talks planned right now?
There is no concrete date agreed. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. As always.